I don't know what people, what their image is. I suppose it's what they read, you know, it's the media image that they've got. They've got that's all, I mean, that's all they can have, really. They go to a show, Keith Moon flicking sticks up in the air, catching them, acting the fool behind the drums. They see any of the movies I've done, and it's Keith Moon being crazy. They read any newspaper articles, and it's me being crazy and zany or whatever. So, what else can they think? Which, I suppose it's true. The things that appear a bit sort of strange to them are perfectly normal to me. I mean, I don't find anything odd in some of the things that have been written about me, but other people do. They go, look at this. Oh, nutty as a fruitcake. But I don't think it's odd at all. Really, it's perfectly normal.
That was Happy Jack. And before that, we heard the voice of Keith Moon. Yes, The Who's late, great, and infamous drummer. The man who invented the trashing of hotel rooms and turned television hurling into an Olympic sport. In the next hour, we're going to meet Keith Moon. Well, thanks to some interviews we found in the vaults at BBC Radio in London. And we're also going to get to hear music from Live at Leeds. Yeah, I know the album has been out for almost 25 years. But the reissue just hit the stores with 8 songs that aren't on the original. The whole record is remixed, remastered, repackaged, re-released. Okay, enough. I want you to hear Keith Moon.
I'm pretty much the same off stage as on. I have a very active sort of social life. I spend about, say, 6 days of the week clubbing and 1 day recovering. 1 day kipping. That's my sort of modus operandi of the week. You know, is that I spend either a week working, 6 days working, and the 7th rest, which is the way it should be, or the way it works for me anyway. No, I think there's a hell of a lot of difference between me on stage and me off. Really, I'm just as crazy both ways.
Keith Moon. He died in September 1978. Just after The Who released their 10th album, Who Are You? Now, ironically, he died from an overdose of heminephrine. That's a medicine he was taking to combat his alcoholism. His rhythm partner, John Entwistle, remembers the first time he met Keith.
We were playing in Greenford one night with the session drummer, and this fella walked up to us and said, "My mate can play better than your drummer." So we said, well, let's hear him then, bring him up. So he brought up this little gingerbread man. And it was Keith with dyed ginger hair and a brown shirt, brown tie, brown suit, brown shoes, and he just looked like a little gingerbread man. And he got up on the kit and we said, can you play Roadrunner? Because we actually hadn't come across a drummer that could play Roadrunner with us. And he played Roadrunner, and we thought, oh, well, this is the fellow. He played it perfectly and fitted in really well. And actually the first gig he actually turned up to with us was, I think it was a wedding. He turned up and he put his little blue drum kit up and then got this huge coil of rope and tied it all together, and we couldn't understand why until he went into a drum solo and everything started to sway backwards and forwards.
I was the last one to join the band, mainly because I'm the youngest, but we all used to play in the same sort of circuit. When I first met the band, I was bright ginger. I dyed the barnet, and I'd been out and bought this goddamn awful sort of bright ginger suit. And it just so happened that when I first joined the band, I was wearing this thing. I mean, it was horrendous. I mean, the ultimate in bad taste. But then, of course, with the round neck collar and all that, it was foam-backed. Terrible. If it rained, the suit stayed wet, like it was like a sponge. It stayed wet for about 3 months. If you went out in the rain and it looked like the Michelin Man. People try to put us to death.
What can you say? It was like every chick's dream drummer. He really was. He was like, he was the glamour in the group. Then he went mad.
Roger Daltrey. I'm Forbes Riley, and we're back with The Who, Off the Record. Here's my favorite quote about the band. If One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is ever turned into a rock musical, you can count on The Who to star. In fact, I think Keith Moon would have insisted.
Later on in the career, we just all came together a bit more and stopped beating the hell out of each other. Although sometimes now it sort of flares up, which is only natural. We're still a fairly volatile band, to say the least.
Townsend, Daltrey, Entwistle, and Moon. You put the four of them on stage and things got crazy. Smashed, punched, and wild.
The stage fights were fairly common. One of us would either turn up late, usually me, or would be sort of... Well, we just generally didn't get on all that well, and we used to take it out on stage, because we used to avoid each other off stage. So the only time we really ever got together was on stage. And so all the pent-up aggression would come out then. And sometimes it just used to get to a flashpoint where instead of it being directed as it is now, we direct it toward the audience and we use it. We used to turn it back on ourselves. So we used to beat each other up on stage. And of course, this used to make for very short shows. In fact, some of the shows we did were only about 6 minutes long, and then everything used to get totaled. Because the average length of a show then was about 45 minutes. And sometimes we stayed the distance. Sometimes we just walk on, smash up the equipment and walk off. And that would be it, 3 minutes, and that's your lot. It wasn't until we started using that kind of energy in a positive direction that the band started to pick up and come together socially and professionally. Before that, it was a lot of it was just destruction, just for the sake of it, just because we didn't particularly like each other at that moment in time. And it was good to have a friend on stage in those days, because it could get pretty airy. I know I'm an extrovert. Yes, oh yes, I'm an extrovert. I think anybody that goes on stage is being an extrovert. I love working in front of a live audience. In a studio, you get into it's like a sort of twilight thing. There's no day or night. You can work sort of around the clock at something just on one tune. You try and recreate the kind of excitement that you feel on stage, but it's very difficult when you're stuck in a 6x4 booth with a pair of headphones and canned music. The way I play is mainly through feedback from another source, and I get most of my ideas from watching the audience or from listening to the other members of the band. When you're in a studio and you're isolated from that, and you're playing to nobody, at times it's difficult, but the brandy helps.